Hello and welcome back to Devlog. In this series, we're developing payroll software from scratch. And in this episode, we're refactoring our database schema for privacy and implementing the employee creation workflow. It's a very diverse episode as we work with our table, server actions, the Snackbar, and so much more. Don't worry if you're new to the series, I'm sure you can follow along. Alright, let's get started with our first ticket, extracting personal information to the employee model. Currently, the user model stores all personal information such as name and address. However, some security concerns regarding this design unravel when we think about how employers will be linking employees with user models. If a devious admin wanted to, they could probably use someone's SIN number to reveal all of their personal information. We cannot provide admins with any information that they do not already have. That seems illegal. Therefore, to create a new employee will require the admin to enter all of the employee's information. As the user's address, phone number, or even name may change from job to job, we'll store this information on the employee model so it is employer specific. And there we go, the employee model now stores the name, phone, and address details. And now that the employee model is better identification for an actual person, we'll tie admin accounts to specific employees as that makes more sense for an organization. And look at that, there we have it, the final employee and user models. Alright, coolio, let's run this migration, which I'm certain will fail. There it is. Okay, so let's delete our database entries and try that again. Perfect, our schema is now done. Let's add back some data so we can log into the app. Since we made significant modifications to the schema, we'll need to go through and refactor the app to work with the new structure. And since we're using TypeScript, we can just go through each file and it'll tell us if anything has been broken. Look at this, I've never been so happy to see TypeScript errors. Alright, let's log in and see if the app still works. Perfect, looks good as new. Let's push these changes up before refactoring the employee self-serve app as well. If we just copy over the migration files, we can run Prisma migrate and we'll have the new schema built and ready to go. And from there, we can go through each file like before and let TypeScript guide us on what needs to be refactored. Logging into the self-serve app, we can see that it works yet again. We're missing all of our data since we had to delete it for the migration, but that's okay. We will reseed the database later. Alright, fantastic. We have officially refactored the entire product to work with a much more secure and I think legal database schema. Alright, next up we need to implement employee creation, but we're going to assume that the underlying Nobility Pay account already exists. Last time, we set up the departments table along with this modal, which we can use for creating and updating departments. We'll copy this over to the employee table as the foundation of our modal, but it will end up having like a dozen more fields. Alright, after copying it over, I just went through and renamed everything from department to employee. We'll also have a lot more form data, which we'll add to this object as we move along. Alright, let's display the modal on the employee table using an add employee button, which I also copied over from the department table. Very underwhelming first draft, I know, we got one text field, but it's working. Now we can add more fields to it and fix up the styling as we go along. For date selection, I'll have to find a good date picker, but for now, let's just use this input design from Flowbyte that does nothing, it's just an input field. Next, 4 more input fields for the employee's address. The code is looking very messy since I'm just copy pasting everything. So let's clean up a bit using a simple TextField component, which takes a name, value, and onChange handler. Look at that, a fraction of what it was. That is so satisfying, so clean. Alright, back to the modal. I'm experimenting with these de-emphasized section headers, which I think look okay for now. I think these are all of the inputs that we need, so let's clean up the translation keys and figure out these special input fields. For province, we'll just replace the same text input with a select that we can populate with option elements. Alright, seems to be working just fine, so let's move the component to another file and render all provinces with translated names. Alright, let's give it a test drive. All the options are available, and notice that when we select the employee's province, the tax province dropdown defaults to that same selection. I think this is the most common case, but they can always change the tax province if they need to. The department dropdown is very similar to the province one. We just render the options dynamically based on the organization's departments. And we grab this data in the parent server component. Perfect, easy as that. We can select any of our organization's departments. Last but surely not least, the Datepicker component. I did some market research on this, and it seems like it would be an absolute waste of time to create one from scratch. Because we have so many anxious investors just waiting for more features, we can't let them down. As such, I found this free Datepicker, which is basically a copy of the Flowbyte one we saw earlier. It looks fantastic and seems to work perfectly, so let's hit an npm install and import it into our modal. Hey, look at this, the styling is kinda scuffed, but it's working. How exciting is that? I'm gonna move the component to another file along with the other input components that we have made, but for now, here's the final code. It's not too bad. To match the styling with our general theme, I pass in some theme and class name options. The other options are not really necessary, but I'm tweaking them to see what they do. And at the end, we return the imported Datepicker, wrapping the input field we grabbed from Flowbyte. And take a look at this, it looks awesome, matches the rest of the app, and works perfectly. We're using two instances of the Datepicker, one for birth date and one for employment start date. We updated the schema, we have the modal ready, it's now time to set up the server action to actually create an employee. In Next.js, server actions are functions that behave like highly abstracted endpoints. They're denoted by putting useServer at the top of a file, and the exported functions can be called in client components. So here I've outlined a very basic server action, create employee, which ensures that the user is authorized, and then it tries the database update logic. So I've split up the logic into three parts. First, finding the associated user using the SIN number. Then we create the employee model, and finally we create the first salary relationship. And of course, the function will have numerous parameters for all of the data we need to create an employee entry. First up, a Prisma find unique query to find the user model with the given birth date and SIN number. I'm hashing the SIN here, but we need the actual SIN, so this is a mistake. Pretend I'm not doing this. I'll fix it later. Next up, if the user is found, we call a Prisma create request on the employee model with all of the necessary data. And finally, once the employee is created, we create their first salary relationship. Alright, very cool. Now on the front end, if the user is authenticated and all the fields are filled in, we can call the create employee server action in our handle submit function with the form data. And here we go, rub those hands together for the first time, moment of truth. Let's give this all a test by creating an employee. Taking this one step further, we can now log into the self-serve app and ensure that the employee immediately has access to the application. Holy smokes, who would have thought these 2 tickets would take so long? Let's push these changes up, and we are done.
But wait, there's more.
I tried to search up if there's like an endpoint we can use to validate a SIN number, but I realized that no way that would exist. That's a crazy national security issue. However, I found out that we can validate the structure of the SIN number. According to this random set of slides I found online, the first 2 digits denote the province, and the entire number must adhere to this algorithm, I guess. Interesting, very interesting. Well, I just asked ChatGPT to write it up for us, and here it is. It's using the LUN algorithm, which I vaguely remember practicing during my final exams, so this must be right. But it seems to be working, and that's all that matters. Now, if we enter a bad SIN, the input complains about it. And if we enter a valid SIN, it auto-formats it with spaces to show that it accepts the input. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Devlog. We have refactored our database schema for the long term with privacy in mind, and we put together a complete employee creation workflow. We implemented a beautiful, responsive, and forgiving modal, and in the process, we laid the foundation for various input components. I hope you enjoyed this episode and maybe learned something along the way. Make sure to subscribe to follow along and see where this project goes. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Well, fancy meeting you here at the end of the episode. Thanks for sticking around. Exciting stuff. Schemas, modals, snack bars, holy, this is like rocket science, am I right? Rocket science. But we're making some good progress, not gonna lie. And, well, I still have you. Might as well like the video, right? Might change one of our lives, who knows.